Morning, brothers and sisters. Gonna take some look at some information, all over the board information, and try to pull a bunch of passages together on a variety of topics. One of which my understanding has really grown on this, the house and the force of Lebanon, which we've discussed in one or two other videos, and also the light that is going to resurrect the dead. Now, we're told plain as day, for anybody who does their study, who the light of the world is. And that light of the world is Israel, going by the name of daughter Zion. She's Ariel, Uriel. Uriel, I believe now, means the light of the world, whereas Ariel is the lioness, the judge, that rises up with the dew in her mouth that you find in Micah 5. Which is also the remnant daughters that were cast off in the fields of the Gentiles. Okay, so that her birthright would be enlarging. We see that in Isaiah 49. We've talked about that one as well. But the first thing we're going to look at, we're not going to look at the house of Lebanon, the house in the force of Lebanon just yet. This was a subject that's been on my mind for a couple of weeks now, and it's to do with identifying the light that will resurrect the dead. And that light is representative of our spirit. In allegory, it represents the sun, all right, as in S-U-N, not S-O-N. The sun is not identified as a man. It's identified as a feminine in scriptures. It's your spirit. Just as the heart, just as the Shulamite says in Song of Songs, look not upon me, because the sun has looked upon me. Look not upon me because I am black. It says, the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own I have neglected. Now the sun that made the Shulamite black was the harlot Babylon, which is representing the spirit that man has exalted in his heart. And the reason why man exalts that harlot spirit in his heart is so that he can exalt himself as God. And he teaches the vineyard what he wants her to teach it. That's why it says, my own vineyard I have not kept. And the sun that looks down upon her and makes her black is the harlot spirit, daughter Babylon. The spirit, when she begins to shine bright as day, it's as fair as the moon, bright as the sun, fair as the moon, terrible as an army of banners. The sun that begins to shine on her is the light of truth, which is the daughter of Zion. So we said in some comments that I've made under videos, for anybody who reads the comments, I really highly recommend reading the comments and trying to put them in order for yourself. A lot of the passages are there. And but the light is definitely identified as Israel. I lost my train of thought there, sorry. And she's going to resurrect the dead with her truth. All right? That's to be clearly understood in scriptures. Now, I've hit at it how the dead will be resurrected, but I haven't really given a lot of passages on it. So we're just going to take a quick look and see what it actually says. So we're going to begin in Isaiah chapter 9. It says, the people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadows of death, upon them have the light shined. So we're looking at people that are walking in darkness. I believe I made that comment on one of my videos. It probably confused a lot of people. Maybe not a lot. I'm not getting a lot of hits. But maybe it confused one or two people. And, well, how are they walking in darkness, you know? And yet, this is what it is saying here. It's saying the people that walk in darkness have seen a great light. It's talking about the dead that are gonna be resurrected by the light, which is identified as the Spirit, and the Spirit is identified in scriptures as Israel, or as the daughter of Zion, or these daughters of Zion. All right? That's what it's identified. And this verse takes us back to Psalm 23, really. in a lot of ways. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, right? That's Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. So they that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them had the light shined. What light? What light? So the first thing we need to be doing is identifying the light. And the scriptures clearly identifies the light to us. But let's just go to Psalm 23 right quick, because I don't have it pulled up here in my passages. I don't have a lot. I don't dare to pull up too many. Might crash my computer. But Psalm 23 tells you who is really guiding you in the valley of the shadow of death and who the light is. Even though we ain't been taught it properly, the men love teaching a fallen theology. They're not going to go in and dive for the deeper truths here. That's that book that John is told to seal up that the seven thunders uttered in Revelation. And the book that he was told to seal up actually comes out of this book. And it's the truth representing the spirit that is actually going to deliver the children. That is sealed up in this book. Alright? And the mystery that gets revealed by the 3.5-year mark is that the daughter Zion is your spirit that's going to resurrect the dead and deliver her children, as the nation of Israel also. So 23 says this, the Lord is it's a shepherdess, it's not a shepherd. They'll have you believe it's a shepherd, everything's a shepherd or a male. It's not, it's a shepherdess here. It's in the valley of death, right? And we were just told they have seen a great light. Well, we're going to identify that light for you through passages in the scriptures. The Lord is my shepherdess, I shall not want. She maketh me to lie down in green pastures. She leadeth me beside the still waters. Those waters there is actually going to take you to the gently flowing waters of Shiloah. Shiloh, the peaceful one. That's your spirit. That's who she is. And she's also identified as, in Judah's blessing, the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes. Well, Shiloh is the daughter Zion, is Israel, Jerusalem, the one that gives life to all things, the light of the world, identified in scriptures as such. She restoreth my soul, she leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for her name's sake, Israel's sake. That's her name. And mother had to leave these daughters because of what took place to her temple, represented as woman's body, but also identified as a standing temple here on earth, as the forest as the house in the forest of Lebanon. This is where it's taking us in our understanding. And verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. This is found taking us back to Isaiah 9 verse 2. They have seen a great light in the shadow of death, in the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Zion, that word Zion is derived from branch. Your staff, your queen, your spirit, all right? Who has promised to have the first dominion restored back to her, the daughter Zion. They comfort me. It's her laws, it's her words of truth that are actually going to resurrect the dead, as attested to in passages in the Bible, which have been sealed up until the end. And these seven thunders, which is the sevenfold spirit, utters them, and it is identified as daughters. Abraham took 7 she-goats. It says lambs, but if you go in and do a deeper study, they say it's probably been mistranslated. It should have been she-goats. And Abimelech is confused and said, why did you set apart these 7 she-goats? Because this was over a well, a conflict of the well, the water, right? And we are told in Proverbs 5, you are to get your water from your own well, your wife. From your wife. Your wife is represented as your spirit in whom you are to receive your water from. Your milk comes from your queen. It does not come from your king. A king don't possess milk. The queen does. And she begins to nourish, at least the daughters here made in her mother's image, actually grows up and begins to nourish the children with this water and this milk that they were always supposed to possess, but we've discussed how it was removed from their possession. There was a conflict going on. We're not going to get into that just yet. But I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now watch this verse right here, because this is identifying who this is. Verse 5, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. This is taking you to wisdom in Proverbs chapter 9. Let's go there, and we'll show you what it says. Thou preparest a table. Okay, Proverbs 9 says this. This is your shepherdess. All right? Wisdom hath builded her house. She builds the house. All right? She has hewn out her 7 pillars. The spirit, the sevenfold spirit, known as these daughters of Zion. You'll notice that beast with the 7 horns, or the 7 crowns, your 7 kings. This is in opposition to him. Here, that's what this is. This is wisdom's house built. And we know it's the daughter of Zion, representing the mountain or the stone that is cut out without hands in Daniel 2, that smashes the toes on that false image. All right? Which we've discussed. She has killed her beast. She has mingled her wine. She's been forced to mingle her wine. She hath also furnished her table. Right? She had sent forth her maidens. She crieth upon the highest places of the city. The highest places. Look at that. See, that's your high places. And that was maidens, representing the spirit that goes forth with the word and the law of Mother God, the Almighty One, who gives life. So it says she's prepared. She hath killed her beast, she has mingled her wine, she has also furnished her table. Here it says, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So again, that's taking us back to the house in the forest of Lebanon, is really what it's doing when we understand all our facts. Now, here we read, right, Isaiah 9, which took us to Proverbs 9, Psalm 23, and Proverbs 9. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shine. Now, let's go to a passage that we find in Isaiah 26, okay? And here we're going to move a step closer in our identification of who the light is, all right? So, Isaiah 26, we're going to read at verse 17. And we've read these verses many times. Like as a woman with child. No, not like as a woman. Like a woman with child. Or a woman with child that draweth near the time of her delivery, is in pain, and crieth out in her pains. So have we been in thy sight, O Lord. Alright? So she's in pain to birth something. A child, obviously. We have been with child. We have been in pain. We have, as it were, brought forth wind. Now, let's discuss the word wind here. We've done it before, but we'll do it here. What we're looking at here is not it's an allegory, but it won't tell you what that actually means, the word wind here, in Hebrew. All right? And the Hebrew word here, it's going to give you 7307, I believe, which is just going to tell you spirit, and it's a feminine. It's going to list you a whole bunch of stuff, all right, about the spirit. But it's not going to give you the allegory, which is what we want out of this verse. What exactly does it mean when it says, we have been with child, we have been in pain, we have, as it were, brought forth wind? What did we actually bring forth? We have not wrought any deliverance in the earth. We haven't delivered the children. All right? They're still in heavy iniquity. They're in sin. They're under bondage. They've got a yoke on their neck. we've not wrought any deliverance in the earth, and neither have the inhabitants of the world fallen. All right? So let's just discuss this word wind before we connect it to the light that's going to deliver them. The only way you're going to understand the allegory here of what wind means is if you go to the Greek number 417. All right? And it's going to give your figurative understanding of what the word wind actually is meaning here. And what it means is this. 417 Greek. Let's get there as fast as we can. It means, let's see. Okay, figuratively, it means, okay, it doesn't actually give it to me. Yeah, it does here. Metaphorically or figuratively, wind of doctrine, or in this case, empty doctrines. Unstable opinion. All right. So we would just give what she delivered here in our Greek word 417. They wouldn't give it to us in our Hebrew word, our figurative understanding. And that's the way this is often going to work. If you're looking for your allegories and your figurative understanding, they won't give it to you in Hebrew when you look those words up. You're going to have to find it in Greek. That's how it works. You'll get just about all of your figurative understanding of your Hebrew words in Greek. That's how they did it. So, what did she bring forth? We have been with child, we have been in pain, we have, as it were, brought forth empty doctrines. All right? You're looking at the daughter Zion here. This is who, when you read this, it's speaking of the daughter Zion, okay? And so we haven't wrought a deliverance in the earth. We haven't been able to deliver our children. Why? Because all we're bringing forth is empty doctrines. And why are we bringing forth empty doctrines? Well, the Shulamite's allegory again in Song of Song 1:6 tells us exactly why. Look not upon me because I am black. To be black in scriptures means to have empty doctrines. And that's identified in an allegory in Lamentations. I forget which chapter it's in. I believe it's chapter 4. I'm not 100% sure. Where it says, when we were doing what was right in God's sight, they were white as snow. And it's an allegory to our spiritual condition. And when they turned away from the truth, they became black. All right, and that's an allegory to the spirit. And so here, the daughter Zion is bringing forth empty doctrines, and she's not delivering any children in the earth from iniquity. She's not delivering them. And neither have the inhabitants of the world fallen, and they haven't. Take a look around us. The wicked spirit is still ruling here. The wicked heart of men making laws and a yoke, putting a yoke on our neck, is still what is the founding of this world. So they've been unable to deliver their children. We're told exactly why they are unable to deliver their children, because they're teaching empty doctrine. They're teaching his truth, and so as such it becomes his vineyard, fallen Adam's vineyard, instead of hers, the spirits, the righteous spirits is what it's supposed to be. Now watch verse 19, which is going to take us to the light. They have seen a great light in Isaiah 9, verse 2. Okay? That they that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them have a light shone. Watch what it says here. In Isaiah 26, verse 19. Thy dead men, no, children, shall live together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing ye that dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. All right. Now, what they don't show you in the King James is that the word light actually appears in this passage as 2:16. But they didn't translate it as light. You can go look this verse up. You can put it on your interlinear, and you can pull all your words up and see for yourself. 2:16, light does so appear here. But the other translations have put the word light in there. All right? So what does it say? Let's find the passages. Let's do this one. It's your ESV. It's not the only one that does it. We'll read a couple here. Yeah. Verse 19. Your dead shall live, their bodies shall rise. You who dwell in the dust, awake and sing for joy. Who's dwelling in the dust? Those who are in the valley of the shadow of death, number one. For your dew is as the dew of light. That's the doctrine of truth. All right, which over here, when meant empty doctrines. So, for your dew is as the dew of light, and the earth will give birth to the dead. See? That takes us back to Isaiah 9, verse 2. The people that walk in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, that's those in the dust. All right? Upon them have the light shined. Who's giving birth here now? It's daughter Zion. Where was she told she'd give birth? Do you know where she was told she would give birth? And be restored back to her rightful place? Let me see if I've got it here. Okay, Micah chapter 5. Let's read from verse 1 to... Okay, it's actually verse 3 we want. But we'll read verse 1, 2, and 3 of Micah 5. Now gather thyself in troops, O daughter of troops. This is your 144,000 first fruits. No guile in their mouth. They're holding truth in their mouth. And they are your deliverers. They are the ones that will either protect you, but then as an Ariel, a lioness that's also holding this truth in their mouth, can also cut you away, as in that foreskin who represents the covenant with the harlot spirit. Both men and women who won't let the lion theology go. You can be cut away, or you can have the light shine on you. So you have Uriel representing the light of Israel, and then you have Ariel as the lioness of Israel. Okay, of God, of El. You have the light of God, Uriel. You have the lioness of God. So it's also representative of a double-edged sword. Now I'm still studying that, and I've come a long way on it. But I don't think we're really going to be able to get into it. So, but we'll read this. Now gather thyself in troops, O daughter of troops. He hath laid a siege against us. You can put the harlot has laid a siege against us. Like I said, there was a division going on. But he laid a siege against us. They shall smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon that cheek. It means they silenced these daughters' words of truth. They were eventually cast out into the lands of the Gentiles. And what does it say? But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou, be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall not he. This is a female descendant. Go look your words up. They want you to believe everything's he. No, your firstborn is the daughter. She was the last thing created in the creation account. But she came from the beginning. And as the last thing created, she is the beginning and she is the end. But she is also your firstborn. Okay? Now, you can say Judah, Christ, the second Adam, Joshua, whatever you want to go by. He's the testimony to the Spirit of truth. That's what his death on the cross represents. The testimony of Adam to the truth of the Spirit that should be governing his heart. And that's the daughter Zion. So he's the testimony, but she's the law. Alright? So he represents this temple, but she also represents a temple. We're going to get into that. And we're going to get into the spirits and the way that this works in the Scriptures, as identified in the Scriptures. So what does it say? Out of thee shall come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel. That's your governor. She, the daughter of Zion, she's promised the dominion to be restored back to her, whose going forth had been from old and from everlasting. So she came from the beginning. She's cut from her mother's spirit. That's what it's saying. Verse 3. Now, this is going to link us back to what we just read in Isaiah 26. All right? Like as a woman with child that draweth near the time of her delivery is in pain and crieth out in her pain, so have we been in thy sight, O Lord. We have been with child, right? We've been through this. But, watch what it says. Verse 3 of Micah 5, it says, therefore will she, its mother, Spirit Almighty, giving her daughters up, these daughters of Zion, will she give them up until the time that she which travaileth hath brought forth, then the remnant of her sisters, that's Israel, shall return unto the children of Israel. These were the daughters that's cast out. And right now, Israel is another allegory to the spirit above, Jerusalem. We're looking at the spiritual Israel here. I don't think we're looking at physical Israel. And she shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord her God, and they shall abide. For now shall she be great unto the ends of the earth. And she is, because she becomes the great light. And she claims all of the children for her own. This is what it says, Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear. Break forth into singing and cry loud, thou that didst not travail a child. All right? So, what she's saying, your children. We've gave birth to children, right? But we didn't deliver a deliverance in the earth because we kept teaching them empty doctrines. Man-made lying theology, all right? That teaches a he, and puts a yoke on our neck. That's the bondage of a man-made law. And what most don't understand, and I wrote it down, I didn't bring it over, darn it, was that the religious law that came from Mount Zion, which was actually the harlot spirit established there by the men of Israel, which was founded upon man-made laws, okay, laws and lies, which is your Old Testament covenant, okay, fed out to the four corners of the globe and helped shape our civic laws, which then are designed to put a yoke on the daughters' necks in particularly, and to restrain our power, as attested to in Hosea chapter 10. She says, I put a yoke on Ephraim's neck. That means we are yoked by man-made law. Our power is cut down. And that heifer also takes us to the behemoth. Now the behemoth, the word behemoth, they want you to believe it's male there. Oh yeah, everything's male, like I said. Now, behemoth will take you to the word 930, I believe is the word in Hebrew. But if you backtrack one, it's derived from 929, behemoth. And that's a cow. It's a feminine. So behemoth is actually representing the nation of Israel, which is identified as a red heifer burned to ashes. Now, why was she burned to ashes? We're told why that red heifer is burned to ashes in Hebrews chapter 9. Now, I'm getting off track here. But in Hebrews 9, it tells you she was burned to ashes to cleanse the temple, the body of man. All right? In this case. Because they had gotten away from teaching the truth. She had to be burned to ashes. But out in the fields of the Gentile, here in Micah 5, she is going to travail and bring forth. Right? Therefore, will she give them up until the time that she which travaileth has brought forth. What it means is she begins to teach her vineyard. This takes us back to the Shulamite saying, but my own vineyard, my own children I have neglected. I have failed to teach them the truth from my mother, Israel, which in the beginning she did have. All right? Anyway, we're looking at a lot of allegories. So, but then it goes to Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear. Break forth into singing and cry loud, thou that didst not travail child. We weren't teaching them our truth, we were teaching his. Thou that didst not travail child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord. Married wife here is Baal, B-A-A-L. And what that simply means is a woman who teaches a man-made theology. One that tickles his ears. She's playing his harlot. She's tickling his ears. This lying theology that teaches a he, and man as God. That's your false image that the Mount Zion cut out without hands, representing these daughters or the 10 northern tribes of Israel, smashes the toes on that false image of a king. That's what that's telling you. And what was the promise if you didn't bow down to that false image as a king and a ruler and a god? Moloch is derived from king, all right? And that's what the world began to hearken to. The words of Baal, Moloch, a king, a male, and cast off the queen, all right? That's what they were doing. And we're told why the queen permitted it. And she does have the power to permit or disallow it. She permitted it. And so it smashes that false image. And what's the promise? What did they do? They had the furnace 7 times harder to cast them into the lake of burning sulfur if you don't bow to this image. And so we're hitting at a lion theology. If there was a man, and I suspect strongly there was, because we have to have the male image, because we have a male here and we have a female, and both are said to be part of the Godhead. And we are told in passages like Psalm, I believe 78, that Judah is the testimony. So the fathers or the sons are to be a testimony to the daughter Zion, Israel's, the 10 northern tribes, law. And what they did is the first Adam refused to testify to her laws, which were the 10 commandments, fairness, equities, laws of fair judgment, fair treatment to all. There was equality. Man was never over a woman. She says, I'll remove the name of Baal out of your mouth. He's not your Lord and your master. He never was. And this false image testifies when the daughter smashes those 10 toes on that false image. When they finally wake up and they go in Micah 5, they deliver the children. Then it says, more are the children of the desolate than of she who has a husband. Baal is your harlot spirit that man exalts in his heart, so he can teach his own doctrine, right? And that's why the Shulamite says, but my own vineyard I have neglected, my own children I have neglected, because he made me the keeper of the vineyard. So verse 2, enlarge the place of thy tent. All right, that's the tabernacle that she will now inhabit. Now this is where this is actually going to lead us to the house in the forest of Lebanon. Now we have a lot more to say on this light of the world. Isaiah 49 clearly identifies the servant of the Lord as Israel, which is also the light of the world, which is identified as a heifer in scriptures that is promised full restoration back to her rightful place as the queen, as the governor of the world. All right? And they are mother's inheritance, mother God above's inheritance, and she indwelt these daughters with her spirit, which then they would go forth with the law. Now there's a pattern shown us how they did this. All right? And we'll do this part next. Now we're going to look at the house in the forest of Lebanon. All right? And so what are we told of the house in the forest of Lebanon? Well, in Isaiah 22, okay, so I got to minimize here. This down, this up. Okay. So Isaiah 22, we're going to look at verse 8. What does it say here? And he took away the covering of Judah, and you did look in that day to the armor of the house of the forest. All right. So the house of the forest here is identified as the house in the forest of Lebanon. Now, in our studies, and it was included in a video, a link underneath that video, I can't remember which one, to the information on the house in the forest of Lebanon. And in that information, it was stated that they did not have any understanding of the purpose of the house in the forest of Lebanon. This is what I have concluded, and you can go in search of this truth for yourself. that the house in the forest of Lebanon was the stronghold of Judah. And what that means is this citadel, that they have no idea what the purpose was, actually represents the woman's temple, the woman's body, as identified and given to us in Song of Songs, chapter 8. Okay, you go read that passage for yourself. You will begin to understand she's identified as the stronghold of Israel, which was also, I believe, from my studies and from what the Spirit has shown me, all right, and from reasoning the text together, which is what we are told to do in the Spirit, to reason the text out, that this house in the forest of Lebanon was where the daughters of Zion met as the government of God. They were identified as wearing mantles in Micah chapter 2. And we've done this. This was all to do with the key of David. All right, this is how the government of God works. You watch. Okay, so Micah 2. I can never find Micah. Okay, Micah 2. What does it say? Where was it? It was verse 8. What does it say of what the men, and this clearly is identified as men doing it to the daughter of Zion, is what they were doing it to. As they were passing through the gates of the wall of David, Solomon's father, which he daubs these gates up, right? Took unto him harlot wives, and he daubs the gates up. This is an allegory to the key of David found in Joseph's blessings, which is the queen's blessing, queen, daughter Zion. And it says, the archers sorely grieved her, not him. And your archers, your word for archer there is Baal. Your husband who wants to be your Lord and your master. And an arrow, to shoot an arrow means to fire words as well, is another allegory. So these wicked sons of Baal, of Belial, were shooting wicked words. They were trying to put in play a new doctrine, a lie. And they were shooting at the branches, as it says. Look the word up. That's daughters. Now we know branch means Zion. That's what we know. Zion is derived from the word branch. So they were shooting at these daughters of Zion as they passed through the wall of David, all right, into the house of Judah, Zion. So where were they passing from? All right, is another question that we need to ask. And once we begin to realize that we are not made in a man's image, we are made in a woman's image. We're made in our mother's image. And that our mother represents that spirit. And as such, we also tabernacle in a different tabernacle. So it means that there was 2 tabernacles established on this earth. All right? What did they do to that tabernacle in the house of the forest of Lebanon? This is key. It tells us precisely what they did. And it's backed up by further passages that you find in Isaiah, in Psalm 137. They said, razor, razor to the ground. All right? This is the citadel. This is the palace. This is where the daughters, who were identified by mantles, this is the outer garment that represents the glory, which is the woman, representing the spirit. The inner garment represented man, the body. The outer garment, the glory, which is her mantle that she wears. And these daughters of Zion was identified by these mantles, probably of various colors, based on the tribes that they were from. And they would pass through these gates in the wall of David on their way to Mount Zion, where the law would issue from. Okay, now, what are we actually looking at in allegory when we get a deeper understanding? Because there was something missing in the picture, and that was the woman's temple. All right? And mother indwells the woman's temple, and she is the Almighty God. All right? Now, let's watch what took place, because the Bible backs this all up once you begin to study it and understand it through the Spirit's eyes. So what does it say in Micah 2 that they were doing to these women? It says, the women of my people have ye cast out from their pleasant houses. That means our bodies, the body that rightfully belonged to us, which is also a representation of the house in the forest of Lebanon, which was a mighty palace and citadel, which is identified in Song of Songs chapter 8, that needs to be rebuilt. Because why? Why does it need to be rebuilt? We only ever hear of one temple, one temple, one temple. We never hear of two, all right? Why? It's told us in the scriptures why. But it says, the women of my people have ye cast out from their pleasant houses. From the children have ye taken away my glory forever. But if we backtrack a verse, it tells us what the men were doing. It says, even of late, my people, my sons, have risen as an enemy, and ye pull off the robe, the mantle. They were pulling off these daughters' mantle, their glory, with the garment from them that pass by securely as men averse from war, as if they were men at war. And they were. They were warring against the righteous spirit. And they say in Psalm 137, razz her to the ground, tear her house down, tear her down. Take all knowledge of her existence out of history, so we don't get any understanding of this truth, which is the little book that John was told to seal up in the book of Revelation, and that little book, which is the spirit of truth, hid in this book, which will poison you by man-made theology. But the seven thunders uttered something, and John was instructed to seal it up. We have two others that were also told not to utter what they saw or heard, and that was Daniel and Paul. Paul was bit by a fiery or burning serpent. That's the seraphim. That's the glory, right? And it latched onto his hand. Now, it doesn't tell us the purpose of it. But Paul told us himself he was taken to the third heaven. And there he was shown things that he was not to utter. So we have three. We have three males, all right, reserved to testify to what the truth is at the end. All right? And that truth is daughter Zion's law. Now, back to the house in the forest of Lebanon. This Isaiah 22 is discussing actually what King Solomon did to this house, but in the end, what this led to. Okay, now this is how I pieced the information together. You're going to have to let the Spirit do it for you, based on many, many passages. If you read the Bible a lot, you'll hit on a lot of them, and it will validate for you this truth. And ironically, Enoch actually also testifies to this as a truth when you get your correct gender, because they love to everything he, and leave the female completely out of the context. When you put the female back in the context, then it becomes clear what was going on. So what were they doing to the house in the forest of Lebanon? Number one, the house in the forest of Lebanon was a great citadel. It was a great palace, and it was where the government of God, known as these daughters of Zion, identified by these mantles, all right, that they would go up to this temple. Only women were allowed into this sanctuary, and there they would meet, is what it looks like, with Mother God Almighty, all right? And it was her laws representing the Spirit of God that governed the lands, all right, our bodies. These daughters would go in to this house. They would receive the law and whatever else from Mother. Then what it looks like, they would pass through the gates of David, and from there they would go into the male temple, the male body, on Mount Zion. They were the glory, or the daughter Zion was the glory that would sit in the Holy of Holies. From there, your high priest would come in to the glory. And there, not all these stupid rituals. That's not what this purpose was. The scriptures even tells you that. It was not for all these stupid rituals that the temple became known for. It actually was for the high priest, which is now Christ. All right? That's Christ. He's our high priest. He's after the order of Melchizedek. That makes him the kingly priest. And the only one that can set foot into the glory, daughter Zion. All right? So the male high priest would go into the glory. He would receive the rulings or the laws. And their gifts would take place. The way things were to be done. And that high priest, and in this case it would be Christ, would go out and tell the other priests, and they would take these rulings out into the land of Israel. Now what it looks like in every land that is to come, Israel is, the whole world is going to be called Israel. All right? And but the high priest would go in. Now what began to take place? This is what it looks like. And I'm getting off track because now I forget. Okay, yeah. How they tore this temple down. What looks like took place is these priests, these high priests and priests, when they would go into the glory, they would start to twist what they were hearing. And when they come out back to the people, they would alter the law, is what they would do. They would alter the word. And there came a point when they began to actually write it down. Okay? Because it says, I'll write the word of truth on your heart. All right? These daughters of Zion were known as the word manifested. So we're almost like books, in a sense. And that's why when John was told to write the words down, but then to seal it up and not write it down, it didn't make sense. But then what you're really looking at was he had heard it. He had written it down inside of him as this book, right? And then he was told to seal it up. He wasn't allowed to speak it, let alone write it down, but it had already been written down in his heart, right? So that's kind of what you're looking at, and I'm getting ink all over me. So these priests began to take control of the law, and slowly over time they began to write violence into it. And this is where you'll go to Jeremiah 23, and Mother God says, you say I said this, because you see it was through her daughters that she spoke to the high priest, and the high priest would take it back to the people. Okay? That's what was going on. And she says, you say I said something that I didn't say. So you're lying through your teeth, you know. You liars. You write violence. You speak as if it's a man telling you these things, a male telling you these things. It is not. And that's how Judah discovers the covering. Solomon discovers the covering of Judah. This is how. The men actually marched into the temple, is what they did. This house in the forest of Lebanon. And this is what they did to it. Psalm 74. Let's read it. Now you understand this is the daughter Zion being cast down, which takes us to many passages in the book of Jeremiah, actually. Which you'll also get, the women of my people have ye cast out from their pleasant houses, from their children have ye taken away my glory forever. They were actually destroying the houses in Jerusalem that these women dwelt in. And so they were taking away the birthright from the righteous spirit. But there was also a fraction represented by Lucifer. Now remember what Lucifer means. What is a light bearer? Alright? She was not the anointed cherub. She was one of them. All right? And it looks like what she began to do was to go along or encourage these priests to alter the law. All right? And over time, what does man do? He puts a harlot spirit in his heart, and that's who his covenant is with. This false light bearer, represented as the daughter of Babylon that you see speaking in Isaiah 47. She says, none seeth me. I'm hidden in his heart. I'm the one who his covenant's with. He's exalting himself as God. I will never be widowless. I will never be childless. Look, he's got the Shulamite teaching her vineyard his lies, and therefore they're his vineyard, and the harlot's vineyard that's hidden in his heart. All right? And what did she say? It looks like this congregation of the Lord, which was the daughters of Zion here, that met in the house in the forest of Lebanon, which was in the north. All right? What does this daughter of Zion, who went astray and was teaching a false law, right? She was actually trying to take out the Almighty God. That's what she was trying to do. She was coming against actually her mother. She was coming against. But the real daughter of Zion did not. She did not depart from those truths. That's why a third of them is seen fallen. What was I saying? So if you go to Isaiah 14, what does Lucifer say? The false light bearer, the false son that made the Shulamite dark. So what we're looking at is women who were once controlled by the righteous spirit. That righteous spirit come off of them, and the harlot spirit's teachings begin to take control of this body. So you see the Shulamite, and she's cast out into the wilderness, right? That's what she's done. She's been cast out into the wilderness as the Azazel goat to bear the sins of what Israel did. All right? So she says, well, we have to cast you all down in order to reconcile the nations back. That's in Romans 11. All right? So, but the Shulamite says, look not upon me, because the sun has made me black. The sun that made her black was Lucifer, the light, the false light bearer. She's not the light of the world. All right? And she represents a false sun up there. That's not our sun up there. That's not our true light. That's why the Shulamite was made black by the sun. All right? It's representing Lucifer, who says this in Isaiah 14. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. Let's backtrack to verse 13. Or we'll go to 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, daughter of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nation, the lion theology. And of course, we're told all about the male part on this. They desired a covenant with the harlot because it tickled their ears. It was like honey on their tongue, but it is wormwood. And it states that they began to plant hemlock, which is another word for wormwood, in the fields after mother yoked Ephraim, and Judah began to plow, and Jacob began to break up the clods. They were actually putting in their vineyard at that time, a lying vineyard that would receive their doctrine. That's why Ephraim is yoked. Ephraim represents the daughter of Zion that is yoked by the law of man-made theology, which came from Old Testament law, which represents the covenant between the harlot spirit and fallen Adam. And then that is what they began to exalt on Mount Zion, physical Israel, Mount Zion, which is not Mount Zion really. It's daughter Babylon that they built up so they could rule themselves. They fed it out to the four corners of the world, and it became our false foundation for our civic laws. Do we not understand this? That puts a yoke on woman's neck in particular. Woman has never been freely given rights. by man. She was given them by God in the beginning. Plain and simple. Man had no right to yoke us until God says, only my sword, only my word can approach to the behemoth, which is the heifer, which is Israel, which had then to be burned to ashes. All right? So, for thou hast said in thine heart, backtrack to 12. Isaiah 14:12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, daughter of the morning or the dawn? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nation? 13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. That takes us right back to the house in the forest of Lebanon. That's where they met. That is where the congregation of these daughters, this assembly of the daughters of Zion, known as the government of God. And they met inside of a citadel, which represented their bodies. Their bodies were mighty in representation by the design of this citadel alone. When you see it, you begin to realize the power that was at their hands. All right? And so it becomes imperative that the men of Israel tear this tabernacle down, or this house, this citadel, this stronghold of the daughter of Zion, which was the covering of Judah, which protected him with the law of heaven, and they had to tear it down and get it right out of memory. No memory of her exists. None. But the reason why no memory exists is because that little book got sealed up in this big book, which then John is told to take the book out of the hand of the angel, which is the birthright holder. It's actually representing daughter Zion as the sevenfold spirit, and takes the book, open book, that's this book, out of the angel's hand. And when he eats it, it tastes like honey on his tongue, but it's sour in his stomach. That's the wormwood. And he's told to go preach. He's told he has to preach it. All right? So he goes out and preaches it, and he's told to seal up the little book that was inside this big book that the seven thunders, the Spirit of God, uttered. He wasn't allowed to speak on it. And same with Paul, and same with Daniel. They were not allowed to speak on this. Only in the end days. All right? Are these words going to be found again and uttered? All right? And so, the congregation in the sides of the north. And I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. Well, that takes us to what daughter Babylon says in Isaiah 47. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter Babylon. You see, she's the one that allowed the harlot's law, fallen Adam, to exalt himself and make a yoke for the daughters of Zion's neck. All right? O virgin daughter Babylon, sit on the ground. There is no throne for you. There never was. Which takes us to the covenant of the wife of Adam's youth in Malachi chapter 2. And she says, she's the wife of your covenant, not this harlot. Wherein this harlot permitted you to exalt yourself. And we have a false sun up there, shining down on us. That's actually tested to on a channel that I recently found, and a lot have found her. The Final Days. Right? She's actually testifying to the fact the heavens is getting ready to be scrolled back and show you the truth. The real sun is behind these large bodies out there in the second heaven and actually shines on it from behind. The false sun is in front, and it's been malfunctioning, which is ironic because it's not ironic. It's actually backing up Scripture. Because Mother says, I believe it's in Isaiah 34. I'm getting back to this in just a second. Okay, Isaiah 34, I believe it is. Maybe it's not. It's in the 30s. She says, I'll remove the covering of darkness from your eyes, which lines up with, I'll scroll back the heavens and show you the truth. Which then takes us to, in Isaiah 54, when she says, I'll make your pinnacles. The word for pinnacle there in Isaiah 54 is sun. I'll make your sun of rubies. We've got the wrong spirit, which is of Lucifer, which is the false light that makes the Shulamite dark, wherein she's teaching a lying theology to the children, which takes us back to the daughter Zion, unable to birth her children. It says also in another passage, let's look at this. I'm losing sight of this. I'll get back to it. What does it say in Isaiah 37, verse 3? And they said unto him, Thus saith Hezekiah, This day is a day of troubles, and of rebukes, and of blasphemy. For the children are come to the birth, and there is not strength to bring them forth. You see, we cannot deliver our children on a man-made harlot theology. We can't. We have to take our vineyard back. And we can only deliver our children through truth. This is why we're under judgment right now. We are not listening to the Spirit of truth. We're listening to man-made lies. And everybody is waiting on a man to deliver us. And what does it say in Micah? What does it say of these daughters? It says they wait not on the Son of Man. It says sons of men. But it's the Son of Man. They're not waiting for his deliverance, because they know as the Spirit is on them to deliver the children out through the gate, not him. He's waiting, yes, but it's not on him to deliver the children. It is on her to shine the light, right? And to deliver the children that have already gone on from darkness. That's why he says you can blaspheme me and get away with it. He's actually saying you can blaspheme the Son of Man and live, but you're not going to blaspheme the Spirit of truth and live. That's your death. That's why she's Uriel, either your deliverer, your light, your protector, or she's your area that's going to take you away, cut you away, and none can deliver, it says. But she says she'll wait not. These daughters don't wait to be appointed by no Son of Man. That's why they're a mountain cut out without hands. No hand cuts them out. They're made in their mother's image. They represent the Spirit from above, and they were of old as well. So, but in Isaiah 47, come down, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstone and grind meal. Uncover your thigh. But what does she say to her? Or what does she say herself? I am. Verse 10. We've discussed this. She says, I will never be widowless. I will never be childless. Because I'm hid in his heart. She says, no one sees me. I'm who his covenant's with. It tickles his ears. It's like honey on his tongue. It's really wormwood and cobra's venom in his stomach. It's really killing him. To believe he, or he. And to not put any real faith into the daughter Zion as the Spirit of truth. And she says in verse 10, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. You see, she's hidden his heart. That's why men are not circumcised. Circumcision was not under the law. It was part of the covenant that Abraham agreed to make with Mother God, representing the covenant with her daughter of Zion, at that time represented by Sarah. And in Galatians 4, she is also represented as Sarah. Sarah represents Mother Jerusalem from above that gives life to all things, whereas Hagar represents the harlot that is under bondage of the law that came from Mount Sinai. And we're told that in Galatians 4:24. These two women are an allegory to two covenants. Well, fallen Adam chose a covenant with the harlot, and he exalts her and he hides her in his heart. Abraham was to be circumcised, cutting away the foreskin. That foreskin represented the harlot spirit that these men whore after. And they whore after that spirit so they can exalt themselves and they can build themselves up with thick clay. That means under the law, They're not yoked. We're yoked under the law. We have no rights under the law. She's yoked our power under the law. She's permitted it. We're told why. We've discussed this over and over again. And so the plants that go into the ground is this plant put in by the man. And she's teaching the lies to the vineyard. But my own vineyard I have not kept. So she says, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it has perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none beside me. And that takes you to Lucifer, the false light of the world, again a feminine, which takes you to that passage that we just discussed in Isaiah 14. So, again, what did the men do? We'll go back to the house in the forest of Lebanon. What did they do to it? Well, it's clearly identified as the house in the forest of Lebanon because they're cutting trees down as if they're in the forest of Lebanon. It represents these daughters. Maskil of Asaph, that's your gatherer, that's your spirit, that's your daughter, that's your female assembler in Ecclesiastes 12. They call preacher. Nope. It's your Koheleth, that's a title, an office, a mantle that these daughters, many of them held, or one of them held, of God. O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why does thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Well, the reason was for Lucifer and her folly and her pride, and this pride got taught to the high priest, which then began to corrupt the law. Remember thy congregation which thou hast purchased of old. How did she tell us she purchased us? She purchased these daughters with her spirit. That's how she purchased them. With her spirit of truth. That's how they were her daughters. Thou hast purchased of old the rod, that's Zion, of thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed. This Mount Zion wherein thou hast dwelt. These daughters of Zion. It's not a city, it is, but it's these daughters that we're looking at, represented as the heifer of Israel. Heifer represents Israel, the nation, which is also the behemoth, though they want you to believe it's male. It's these females, this powerful government of God that held her law. They would meet in the house of the forest of Lebanon. There they would receive the law from God, the Spirit, Mother. Then they would pass through the gates in the wall of David and on to the male temple, where they would enter into the Holy of Holies there. From there the high priest would come in, receive the rulings or whatever, and from there he would take it back to the other priests, and they would take it into the nation of Israel. The corruption began here between this glory that was sitting here in the Holy of Holies of the male temple and between the high priest, and they began to corrupt the law. We're told that in many places that the high priest began to take control of the law and corrupt it, and they began to write much violence into the law against their sisters. We're told that again in Malachi 2. And so here it says, lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolation, even all that the enemy had done wickedly in the sanctuary. The sanctuary here is the house in the forest of Lebanon, the citadel, our body. And thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregation. They set up their ensigns for signs. This takes us back to the men of Ker in Isaiah 22. And they literally went in to this house that they were not permitted into. And that's why it also states that Solomon discovered the covering of Judah, because these wicked men entered into a sanctuary that they had no right to enter into. And so it says, thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. They set up their ensigns for signs. They began to take a slow control of the female body representation, the citadel. And slowly they began to take control of the law from Mother. Mother comes off of them, right? And then the harlot spirit enters completely in. The daughters that were completely fighting against them got cast out. all right, into the lands of the Gentiles, into a land not inhabited. And there they bore the sins of what went on in Israel. And so thine enemies roar in the midst of the congregation, they set up their ensigns for sign. So this is where Baal, your husband, began to take control of the law and of the word. This was a slow process over time, I believe, maybe faster than what I realized. Now watch what it says. It says, a man was famous according as he had lifted up axes upon the thick trees. The thick trees here are the daughters of Zion. But now they break down the carved works thereof at once with axes and hammers. This must have been a beautiful temple, a beautiful citadel, a beautiful palace. They have cast fire into the sanctuary. They have defiled by casting down the dwelling place of thy name to the ground. Mother God. All right? They cast her dwelling place to the ground. That's our bodies. All right? That is why we became so weak. We've become so weakened. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them together. Them who? The daughters of Zion. They have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land. So these daughters would go out from this house in the forest of Lebanon to their own personal synagogues in their own land where they were from. All right? That's how it works. We see not our signs. There is no more any prophet, neither is there any prophetess among us, any that knoweth how long this will last. And this is what the daughters of Zion are saying, the righteous daughters of Zion. O God, how long shall the adversary, our enemy, Lucifer, the false light of the world, and fallen Adam, reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? And they have. Boy, do they blaspheme the feminine. They don't give an inch on that. No such thing. Why withdrawest thou thy hand? The right hand was the daughter Zion. All right? And they're saying to her at the end, pluck it out of thy bosom. Please send thy right hand to deliver us. That's the spirit back on these daughters of Zion at the end of days. And God confesses to them in Job 40, I believe, know thee not, thine own right hand can save you. I gave you the right hand to save you. And verse 12, for God is not my king of old, God is my queen of old, working salvation. Salvation is 344 there. That's Yeshua. It's representing these daughters of Zion who did a mighty work and great wonders in the midst, representing the spirit of the earth. All right? Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the water. Now, if you study Isaiah 51, Isaiah 52, and go back to Psalm 89, you'll realize the right hand of God is identified as the daughter of Zion who brake the dragon's head in the waters. All right? Thou breakest the heads of the Leviathan in pieces and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Well, he is swimming around in the waters too, I suppose, male, because it's his theology now. But the harlot is there, the harlot spirit. But he took control of the water. And what does it say of the bride? She will be a fountain, a garden sealed. All right? So, in verse 15, thou didst cleave the fountain and the flood, thou driest up the mighty rivers. The mighty rivers were the daughters of Zion. We're told they are to be your waters, where you get your truth from. They dried them up. The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun. So that's Mother God. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. Remember this, that the enemy has reproached thee, O Lord. That's our Mother God, M, who gives life to all things. They reviled her. They cast her off. They took her out of the context of everything. They blaspheme her. Got the daughters blaspheming her. Got the daughters blaspheming themselves in their own image is what they've got them doing. And that the foolish people have blasphemed thy name. She calls you foolish people. Oh, deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove. We see the turtle dove lying in the ashes, actually, in Psalm 68, when you understand the truth of the words there, which then takes you back to Ariel as an area in Isaiah 29. So Ariel in the first part means the lioness of God. And the last Ariel actually means an altar hearth, where she's burned to ashes, all right? Which is also a representation of your red heifer, which is also a representation of your heifer in the Abrahamic Sarah covenant, promised restoration. So remember this, okay, deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove, who had lain among the ashes, that's in Isaiah 68, though her wings were of silver and gold, right? And we're promised that that familiar voice, that familiar spirit that comes from Mother God, the truth, she will begin to hear call out of the dust of the earth. Again, I believe that's in Isaiah 28 or 29. Forget not the congregation of thy poor forever. Now, let me see here, what else? Okay. It says, have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. And that's basically how men begin to rule the world, through horrid violence, the shedding of blood, putting a yoke on woman's neck, trying to prevent the righteous spirit from rising up and taking the vineyard back. These wicked men and harlots that they're in covenant with, know ye not, he that is joined to a harlot is one, so you're a harlot too, is what it's saying, because you're receiving those teachings and you love exalting yourself. It tastes like honey on your tongue, it's tickling your ears, and it's wormwood, it's hemlock. You're as hemlock in this garden, your poison is what you are. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause, remember how the foolish man reproaches thee daily. Forget not the voice of thine enemies, and the tumult of those that rise up against thee increases continually. And they do. They're really mad. But this clearly is identified as the house in the forest of Lebanon. They were cutting them down, these thick trees. Let me see here. Yeah. As thick trees. And this is identifying your forest of the trees. It says, it seems as if one had lifted up his axe in a forest of trees. That's your house in the forest of Lebanon. All right? And they were tearing her down. Now, what it looks like, we're running on his body and his theology. We ain't got our own yet. We ain't been empowered with that citadel, the power that the citadel and that our mantle of glory gave unto us. And that was the Spirit of Mother God upon these daughters who knew the law of heaven. They would then pass through the gates of David and to the man's temple. It would represent the male body. She would enter into the Holy of Holies. He was to exalt wisdom, daughter Zion, Mother Jerusalem. That's who's to be exalted in the heart of man. And he began to hearken to this wicked spirit, Lucifer, who appears to also have been an anointed daughter of Zion, who then began to alter these laws and these words. And this high priest that entered in would begin to slowly alter the words. And it's told to us over and over again that that's exactly what they did. They began to alter the truth, the words of God, and began to lead the people astray down a crooked and false path, all right? Not the truth. And these daughters are promised full restoration, back to the rightful place. Okay. So they're identified in Micah 5 in this way, okay? Micah 5 verse, I can't see the verse. Sorry about that. It's your last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's in your last 12 verses. It says, and the remnant of Israel shall be in the midst of many people as dew. That remnant is these daughters of Zion. They are cut from the original branch, the original root, the original stone, which was the representation of the Spirit, your shepherdess, your gatherer, your Koheleth. And the remnant of Israel shall be in the midst of many people as a dew. We identify dew as the doctrine of heaven, which is identified to us in Isaiah 32, which is strongly testifying to the virgin daughter Zion That chapter seems to be all about her. And she says, you forgot the God that birthed you and writhed in pain to bring you forth. You forgot your rock. You forgot your stone. And there's no way you're getting a male God out of that. Man don't writhe in pain to bring you forth. Though they've tried to make it look that way. It's talking about birthing there. The birthing of the children. And so dew is identified in Deuteronomy 32 as the doctrine of heaven that drops from heaven. From the Lord, as the showers upon the grass that tarrieth not for man, nor waiteth for the sons of men. I think it should say, waiteth for the Son of Man. Everybody's waiting to be delivered by a man, a man, a man. Christ is coming to take us away, take us away. These remnant daughters who catches hold of the truth, and they are called to the throne of God, and they are handpicked by Mother God, based on that they wear this burden as a yoke on their neck and realize that there is something seriously wrong in the doctrine. They don't wait for the Son of Man. They don't wait to be delivered by no man. It's women that deliver, these daughters of Zion, that delivers the children. We just discussed it all. They're the light of the world, as identified in Isaiah 49. They're the servant of God, identified as Israel. And she says, have I no mercy on it says the son? No, on the daughter of my womb. She says, I haven't forgot you. Oh, they forgot about you, but I never forgot about you. I'm God. And the remnant of Jacob? No, the remnant of Israel shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many people. They're out in the Gentiles, right? It just said that. As a lion? No, as an Ariel, a lioness. These are the lioness of God. Among the beasts of the forest, as a young lioness among the flock of sheep, who if she goes through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. This is the judge element. Ariel, as the lioness, is the judge that teareth and taketh away these men and women of that foreskin, that harlot spirit, that fallen Adam's covenant. Alright? And she teareth them down. She threshes the nations. This is what she's promised in Micah 4 verse 16. Arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will make thy horn iron, and I will make thy hooves brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people. And I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord. That's Mother God right there. And unto the Lord of the earth. That second Lord is 113. That's your high priest. So she gives what he needs to the people. All right. We're told about this union. It says, and the counsel and the peace shall be between them both. And that's in Zechariah chapter 4 or 5 or 6. I can't remember. And it says counsel between a king and a high priest. No, the counsel is between the queen, daughter Zion, and the high priest, the kingly high priest, which is Christ, who goes into the glory and receives the laws that will now govern the new Adam, the temple that he comes into and goes into that glory. But daughter's temple held the Spirit, Mother God. All right, and that was known as the house in the forest of Lebanon. And thine hand shall be lifted up, thine right hand. All right. So there they were asking her to take her hand out of her, you know, and to let it once again go forth. And it does in the end of days, as these daughters, who are the lioness or the Uriel, the flame or fire of God, who is what protects you. She can either protect you or she'll be a lioness. She'll meet you as a lioness. All right? So that takes us back to that passage actually in 2nd Ezra, verse 13, where she, who Mother has kept for all these years, rises from the ocean, from the water of people, from the people. And it says the same one who brings on the judgment is the same one who can save you. You see, So she's this double-edged sword to do with this covenant with man, which you saw as the cutting away of the foreskin. Now this foreskin wasn't cut away till the 8th day. And we're told that the 8th day represents the dawning of a new day. So the 1,000-year reign is about the daughters of Zion and the mantle of God putting the full government into effect and dealing with those that go against it. And then on the 8th day, that entire covenant, that old harlot spirit's covenant, fallen Anna's covenant, had been cut away, and a new day dawns. And that's the daughter Zion's light dawning on man. And so, right, and it shall come to pass. So you can go read that, right, in Micah 5. And Micah 5, this same army that we see there in Micah 5 appears in, I believe it's Isaiah 5. I've got it highlighted. Yeah, it does. It takes us to Isaiah 5, that great army that you see in Isaiah 5. Let me see if I could find it. I highlighted it, I thought. But it speaks of a great army in Isaiah 5, and none have a loose shoe. Yeah, Isaiah 5 verse, I can't see the verse, 22. None shall be weary, nor stumble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. You know, a sandal, when it's filled, represents a marriage covenant, from what I understand. Whose arrows are sharp, and all their bows are bent. Their horses' hooves shall be counted like flint. That's your daughter Zion's hooves of brass in Micah 4:13. Hooves shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. So they move like lightning as well in allegory. Their roaring shall be like a lioness, not a lion. They shall roar like young lionesses. Yea, they shall roar and lay hold of the prey, and shall carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. You see the allegories. And then if we go to Isaiah 13, we'll start at verse 1. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos did see, lift up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones, that is the daughters of Zion. I have also called out my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. These are her daughters, rejoicing in Mother God's highness, the exalted one. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of the nation gathered together. The Lord of hosts has mustered the hosts of the battle. These are the daughters of Zion, and they are receiving their hosts back. Mother God's Spirit has come upon them. She is claiming her inheritance. Job says in Job 31, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above? The inheritance from God on high, Almighty. And that's these daughters of Zion, which are gave in covenant. All right. To teach man the law of heaven, to give eternal life. They come from a far country that they're identified as the North Country. The North Country was another name given to Israel. That's this remnant of Israel that has been cast out into all the Gentile nations. So they come from a far country. This North Country does. From the ends of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of her indignation, not his, to destroy the whole land. This is the threshing of the nations. Actually, the whole land here to be destroyed might actually take us to this mighty army going back to physical Israel and kicking the harlot out. That seems to be identified in the book of Joel. to destroy the whole land. How ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. And they shall be afraid, and pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one another. Their faces shall be as flames. You see, they're in pain as a woman in travail and unable to deliver children. And it says, where is it? Ephraim is a foolish son, and he should not stand in the way, in the gate, where the birthing of the children takes place. I can't find it. It speaks of him as being a foolish son. And the reason why he's standing there in the gateway where children are birthed is because he's claiming he's the spirit that will birth them. And mother says, you are a foolish son. You birth nothing. And that's where they were speaking of the burden of the Lord, issue, the children of the Lord. And they were saying that these children had become a burden to her to deliver, and that they would begin to deliver. And that's why this whole world has swords turned against one another. It's lying religious theology and words. Your word is represented by a sword, and every sword is turned against each other. She says, fine, I'll let you deliver the children, and I'll tell you something, you won't be no burden to me. I won't deliver you. Right? She's offended by what they're saying and what they're trying to claim. God says, my children have never been a burden unto me. Never. Nor to my daughters. They have never been a burden to me. But the men were preaching that it was getting too hard for these daughters of Zion to deliver the children. And so they began to whisper the words of Baal, that Father would deliver the children. And so she says, fine, then every man's sword will become his burden. Then you will deliver the children, is what she's saying here. And that is why you have a world in uproar, in war, and every sword is turned against each other. It's the religious lies, all right? And they have taken the truth from our mouth for us to deliver our children. And only when the daughters turn back to their mother and the rebuilding, she says, Zerubbabel, that's she who was born in Babylon, a foreigner born in Babylon. That's the daughter Zion, who is the foreigner born in Babylon. Because that's what Zerubbabel means. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. I know I'm saying it wrong. But she says, I began the building of the temple, and I will finish it. So she's saying, I am the righteous spirit that began the building of my daughters as the government of God upon this earth. And she says, I will complete it. Now the men in Psalm 74 tore that tabernacle down in all remembrance of these daughters of Zion and their might and power. And mother allowed it to teach the men of this world that they cannot govern themselves, they will die, and to teach the harlot spirit and that these daughters are wrong to go under him as a harlot. Alright? That's part of this whole thing. And then we are also told why it was permitted to happen, why the casting down of the daughters of Zion. They were departing from her words of truth at that time anyway, the men were. And it states, if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? Now we know it's their life that's going to breathe life into the dead. We just established that fact based on the scriptures. All right? And once you get your allegorical understanding of the heifer, of the she-goat, of the ram, of the turtle dove, of the pigeon in the Abrahamic Sarah covenant, and why they're cleaved in the midst, it looks like the Spirit walks in the midst here, and you have two covenants. It's split, right? And your covenant will either be with the righteous, or she'll cut you away. Because know ye not, he that's joined to a harlot is a harlot. And so I think I've spoke on enough for this video. But go read these passages. Read the description under my videos, if you desire to understand the theology deeper, the truth that John was instructed to seal up was in this book. It's a little book sealed up in this bigger book. All right? And the only ones that's going to find it is the sevenfold spirit identified as these daughters of Zion. And that's your covenant, represent as the rainbow. We are to be a red light, a red sun should be shining on us. That's why Adam was red in color. I don't think it had to do necessarily with the ground. It was the light that shone upon him. And he rejected her. And there seems to be some indication by the lady on this channel, The Final Days. I really like her spirit. I may not necessarily agree with her doctrine, having understood the truth. But she seems to be a sweethearted lady. She's saying that this false sun, this false simulation of this sun that is hiding the truth, this dark covering that is hiding the truth out there, is malfunctioning. And that kind of takes us back to Mother God when she says, I'll scroll the heavens back and you'll see the truth that's going on. You'll see it. And I find that utterly fascinating. And she speaks of the rotation that's on these planets. Or like, if you go by the number count on a rotation, it looks like it's about 20 minutes or half hour per rotation. And Earth makes a rotation in 24 hours. I used to think if we spun fast, it would kill us. Now I'm beginning to realize that the faster we spin, the longer life we are. We have a longer life if we spin faster. Our rotation, our slow rotation, is also allowing these huger bodies to have a huge influence on us, because we're rotating so slow that these planets that's rotating faster has a great influence on us because we're spinning so slow. If we spun up Earth's rotation from just that simple understanding and putting two and two together, not that I get all of that stuff, that if we could speed up Earth's rotation, we would be longer lifed, and the bigger planets out there that comes near to us would have little effect on our volcanoes and our tectonic plates and our magnetic field and our electronic, our frequencies and all this stuff. And it looks like it's validated by this lady and what she is claiming on the final days, and I believe she is speaking the truth. I believe what she's saying. I would absolutely go look her up if I was you. And yeah, this is one of my longest videos. I'll probably post it July 1st. I thank all for watching me and trying to understand this. I think it's important that you understand the light that's going to give life to the dead, to those that are dwelling in a place of darkness, and the dust of the earth, that's your graves, and also this body of ours, really, it dies. And hope that you understand a bit better. I know I probably missed points that I really wanted to hit on. I might make another video and include and just read through 2 or 3 chapters in the book of Enoch and speak about those watchers, which is identified as these fallen daughters of Zion. They took unto themselves husbands, all of whom they chose, and they had children, which in here are called giants, right? Well, the giants that these daughters of Zion, these fallen daughters of Zion, gave birth to, is actually a reference to your mighty men who took control of the law in the earth and built themselves up as giants in the earth. And yes, we know the Bible speaks of real giants roaming the earth. We have many videos on the giant skulls and all of this. And yet there's a deep allegory there when it says that they gave birth to these giants, to sons who were giants. The sons that were giants were those who took control of the religious law, and as such, it fed out to the 4 corners of the globe and became our foundation for our civic law, all right? And they become known as your giants, as your mighty men. Nimrod was one of them. He began the building of Babylon. All right? And so we're getting a deeper allegorical understanding to really what is in play here. All right? So again, thanks for all who watched my video. I know this is a bit longer than usual. I thank any who watch it and pull it up and watch it and you know, maybe post it. And may the Lord bless you with an abundance of truth. And I hope y'all have a really nice day.